control of application layers, but why it is something that is really application dependent quite often, and just pretending that we can do better than the application layers and at the system libraries, which are supposed just to ship bits back and forth. It's a bit of a conflict there.
Oh, I mean, I don't think you can do better, but you can do it much more simple way. As Ryan tells, sometimes you don't have an application choice. I mean, you just have an application which can be changed.
Well, in best world, that would mean that we could have views that allow, accessing compressed columns by decompressing inside the view, and when we insert the data into the view, it would be compressed, right? It is the perfect world.
Well,
how many of you use views in this kind of scenarios where like you use that as a layers to your tables, and not in Postgres?
Yeah.
I know who's using views. Like right now, we are using views in some of our cases, like extensively. We have certain tables which have certain data that we don't want to show to people who are accessing those tables, but sometimes query plans are fun.
Actually, one question as we have in the audience is that how many here actually have something that they would like to do that could actually influence their own environment better? And I mean, it's nice for you to sit there and suggest things for me to do, but what could you do for us? The thing is that MySQL was developed to be a practical database. I added functions that I needed. And the more people we have would think that if I could have this, it would make my life much easier. And you would then implement it and test it and give it back to us. That would be the biggest value you can ever give us. An idea is good, but actually testing it and see that it works for you, that's really worth goal. That's where Postgres is still much before MySQL. That's what they do. We need to compare. So, patches please. I mean, the thing with the compressed text time, that's actually a patch that any developer who knows anything about C could do.
Yeah, I think it's the problem is format change. And if you made that flags, we can do it like compression equals.
So you can do that. You can just add a new blob space compress. That is trivial to do.
Yeah, we can do that as well.
Yeah, and that will be a new type, but that doesn't cost much in MySQL. And
MySQL has lots of spare CPU nowadays. Once there still hits CPU capability, like bottlenecks at the other levels.
So comprehensive dtrace probes everywhere in MySQL.
You have missed my talk today.
Yes, I did.
You don't need them.
Why?
Because you can do anything with dynamic probes.
What dynamic?
Okay, Monty, what do you think about dtrace probes?
So the advantage of doing dtrace probes is that I don't need to understand the source code of MySQL. I can ask very generic database level questions. So if you do like SDT probes against like instructions, I need to be able to disassemble your code, which I can do, but like not all my DBAs can do, right? So like knowing all of the different function calls that are in MySQL is something everyone here up front probably already knows. But the idea of like what function gets called when a query starts, like I don't actually know that in MySQL. It's going to take me like 5 minutes of grabbing through the source code.
no, it doesn't. We have the minus debug, which is not the debug yet.
Well, actually, you will
No, I'm in production. I'm in a production box, and I've just got a MySQL binary. I'd like to be able to ask for all of the legitimate probes. Answer. You have something to say?
To get the function name, like to get all the trees, just ask Profiler Provider to provide you a bunch of stacks, and I have a tool that actually visualizes all the flow of what your server is doing.
Okay.
My slides are up on the internet. So what we simply do is like if you go to a dtrace and say, hey, do the profiler, do say 1,000 samples a second, and give me all the stacks that are happening, then you pipe that into like my 50-line Python script that then you pipe into a GraphViz. It makes you a graph of all the flows of execution that are happening in your server. And then you just look at that graph and say, hey, this thing looks interesting. I can just look at it.
But I don't ever really look in the code. I'm looking for like...
But you're looking at the graph. You're looking at visual.
I know, but the point of dtrace is not to look into MySQL. It's to tie it to interrupts going to a fiber HBA, right? Like that's the advantage of dtrace is that I can hook it into like how often the fiber HB does. So it's just if your call graph really makes it obvious that hey that's where a query starts, then you can do that. I can do that.
It does.
So the question is it that different from Postgres, right? Like because I send a query in, and the Postgres one is called query start. It'd be really cool if the MySQL one was called query start too. The function in Postgres is named something crazy. Right?
But you're talking about dtrace probes.
Yeah.
But he also talks about
You're talking about STTs, right? Like the proc provider, using the proc provider,
PID.
the PID provider.
Yep.
Yeah. So the PID provider
As
does.
in, there are like right now. Of course, there were talks yesterday about like at the conference that there are right now probes, MySQL static probes that are get fired on query start or even handler level operations like row insert, row select. So these kinds of things are in there right now in 5.4 and 6.0. So there are probes that if you're lazy, you can use them. I mean, they're amazing, but the real power of dtrace is usually combining things that are not predetermined to be used for dtrace. Dtrace is dynamic. Like you get to use that stuff without anyone else thinking that you will use that.
So there are two uses, not just.
And then again, it's like there is a function in InnoDB that will definitely just put all the I/O path right on your platter, like blue
Yeah.
corners.
Yeah.
So, still confused. What's your question about with dtrace? Because you're still working on 5.1. 5.1 will be in production. You don't know really when 5.4 will be available. What I actually want to do, I want to take the probes from 5.4 and add those into current 5.1 Maria that you're going to make GS soon. So you already have probes in 5.1.
So I guess what I was saying is that it'd be good to collaborate and make sure that the probes that you guys have come up with, 'cause it sounds like you already have static probes in something.
Even Solaris, the web stack thing, I sometimes hate the organization that provides all these stacks. It has them in 5.1.
It seems that you know what the probes that you would need. So
I didn't see them in the source code when I downloaded it.
But I say that I can add the probes that exist in 5.4. When we've done that, you download it, test it, and add those probes that you think are missing.
Awesome.
I think generally, if you have any ideas about
because
dtrace probes, open a bug, write them down, all the suggestions. Because like right now, we have developers working on that and adding that stuff. And if you mention dtrace, I mean, you even get ticket over the Atlantic to come to this conference if you mention dtrace. So it's just like it's really cool stuff and so on.
All right.
From where we can download your slides, dtrace slides.
It's on our other website. So if you go, it will be on my website as well, dammit.lt. So
What's URL?
dammit.lt. But I mean, you'll find them eventually.
Is there a source version of MySQL now I can download that has those
One
probes in it?
6 or
5.4 and 6.0 both have it.
The same ones, different.
They are same ones. They just
There isn't a branch for 5.4.
so some MySQL builds provided by some have it in 5.1.
Okay.
So it has been, everyone is really excited about that.
I am too.
Yeah, me too.
I have an optimizer request. I'd like the optimizer to understand when an index is actually composed of, when the leftmost subset of a B-tree index's columns are actually unique because they match another index which is declared to be unique. And therefore, when doing a join into that index on those columns, treat it as an equal ref instead of a ref.
Actually, shouldn't use the longer index at all if it's can use the other one.
Unless using the longer index results in a covering index query. So right now you have the trade-off that you can either get a covering index and a ref optimizer access type, which results in about 20% more burn trying to see if there's a next row, or you can use the shorter index, get an equal ref, and then you have to make the trip to native
What's
hub.
the speed difference?
It's about 20% in my benchmarks.
For how many rows per?
This is for like large data warehousing style
Which
queries.
engine?
What's that?
Which engine?
It doesn't matter.
It's not 25% per engine. In my answer will be surprised it will be that high. It could be.
Okay, and
It could be in a deep, we do second call, but
I can check my notes again, but I don't think it varied by engine.
because in some engine, doing the next row call is for the row may be expensive. In my estimate, it isn't.
Sure, like in InnoDB, you've got versioning to think about, et cetera.
Yeah, I know, but I see.
But I think even in the server level, there's some cost there.
But it shouldn't be 20%. I could have been believing 55%, which is still huge. 25 is just sounds enormous. Yeah.
Add feature request about drop cascade. Drop cascade.
Yeah. I understand. You have a table.
Drop cascade.
Yes, you have
Didn't implement it.
Yeah, you have a table that is called cascade. You want to drop it.
No, I meant the SQL drop
Yeah,
cascade
yeah.
because it's a little bit annoying. You can delete cascade but not drop cascade. The syntax exists, but when you look to the documentation, it's described, it's not implemented, and it won't work. So we only have drop restrict, not drop cascade.
Yeah.
What, you truncate each table in the four keys?
Yes.
I, for one, don't ever want to see anyone running drop cascade in my system.
Sometimes it's
The whole thing that the foreign keys needs to be reworked, and it's done in 6.0, and they should hopefully implement that.
I thought it was 6.1.
6.1.
6.4 nowadays.
It's actually called 6X.
So I thought a lot of webhooks stuff said 7.1.
It's 6X right now. But
So that's one I don't have plan to do it until 6X is released 2012.
That's like your 2 days.
I'm not the one who defined those releases. Yet.
But I mean, 2 years from MySQL development is like 2 days in Europe. They realize fast.
Think it more. If jokes are getting sillier.
So I got another optimizer thing since he's taking notes over there. Fix the merge optimizer.
Which one?
The merge optimizer. So merge union optimizer, so it can choose two range scans. Two range indexes, and it can merge the results. Or a single row on a range. So for example, I might say where name equals Ryan and created in the last 30 days. It can merge those two. So I don't have to just use one or the other. I can use both indexes.
But don't we allow using of both indexes already?
Well, no, in this case not, because created in the last 30 days will be, it is resolved using a range scan which produces records index tuples which are not ordered by row ID. And we only do intersection of ordered record sequences, so you need to have qualities. Or it needs to be a primary key, a cluster primary key.
A cluster primary key.
Yeah, in the DB is primary key. In DB,
So we can't do that for another storage engine.
no. For other storage engines, we are limited to equality equality predicates and which use all key parts. All parts of the key.
And how easy is it to extend that?
Sorry?
How easy is it to extend that?
Well, you know, there is a little merge, which will produce intersection of unordered strings. And maybe some change in the optimizer also, most likely. Oh, I guess the algorithm is the primary challenge.
Primary.
Challenge.
Isn't this basically intersect of row IDs?
Yeah, but it is an intersection of two strings, so we need to put them into some structure which allow for intersection and all of it.
I assume that when you need this, is it many rows that
Yes.
is matching?
So it's like analytical, large analytical queries. So you make orders of magnitude difference
Right.
on some of those.
Is there any chance that you will need to have a limit in this query, or you want to enumerate all of or you want to retrieve and enumerate all the records that match?
So there might be many different filters. There might be several range scans and several in clauses. I'd like to merge any combination of those based off the cost.
Okay, but would it be in a situation where you will need to say examine on the first record of the result, or have another value from it?
Well, so it's going to be joined to many other tables at the same time. It's not going to be just a straight selection table. There's going to be like 10 plus joins.
I have a feature request. I'd like to have bitmap indexes. Bitmap.
Yeah, we do have that in Maria for the share, which I don't know when we will plan to doing that. I don't know when some of the data warehouse storage chains that already are released does have bitmap indexes. So the question is that we shouldn't add everything into one storage chain. It's better to keep the little bit separate. Otherwise, we just duplicate work. But I mean, they are interesting.
And the other thing is fully asynchronous clients. I mean, we say based on things like lib event, when I can actually, using one thread or one process, collect data from a lot of servers using one process or one thread.
In the client.
In the client.
Drizzle has a new client library that they claim can do something similar to that. And they,
Oh, yeah, sure, I heard that. But,
Yeah,
well,
but I think
Drizzle
they
is
have-
Drizzle.
I'm waiting for Drizzle to finish the client library, and they are not doing the binary protocol. So we have active discussion with Brian and follow of what they are doing, and so my view of this is that let's wait until they have that library stable. If they are not going to do the binary protocol, in that case we'll look at the current library and implement that, and then add it to ours. If we notice that it's notably better.
Actually, you can use the C API for that if you really want it. You can extract that file descriptor from MySQL structure, use it in poll, select whatever, and you can, like MySQL API allows you, there's one call for sending and one for receiving. In the middle you can inject the please tell me when there is data. And when there is a data, you'll already work on it. It's already being sent fast usually. At least if, like that's for most cases. You can't already use the C API that is in there, and you won't feel too much of difference from like real async clients.
Okay, we'll have a look.
But I mean, we are interested in doing that, but I just want that code to stabilize and see how they're going to, if Eric is going to.
Or you can use PHP. New PHP and the adapter does that.
So is Sun going to own that new client API?
The new client IP is in BSD.
I don't know, before I ask this question, I need to see how many people actually use embedded MySQL in this room. Okay. If there's no one, then it's not important.
We
But
embed into MySQL.
Actually, it's
servers
important.
and
I mean,
something,
Okay.
but not
Okay.
backwards.
I'll say what's on my mind. Is there a way that we can scale the footprint of MySQL and have options to not include certain features so we can bring that footprint down so I can put it onto smaller devices?
that actually is not that hard. I mean, that's something that we would like somebody in the community to spend 2-3 days on and make the if-tests, and we are happy to take a patch.
Yeah.
You can remove geography footprints right now.
Yeah?
I mean,
Very cached,
Yeah?
I really would like to see a smaller version for that. And the embedded library was something that we created 2001, way before SQLite. And our salespeople said that we don't see any use of that. Nobody will need embedded SQL anymore. And I said that, but we already had this working. But nobody was selling it, and our marketing department put nothing on the website. So it just got unused. And then SQLite was created because there were nothing that could do something similar. So I mean, that was just what happens when you take marketing people who in the company and they take a driving role to decide what should be published. So that's something that makes me really, really, really angry, and that will ensure that it will never happen again.
But it's easy to make our marketing people excited.
You're concerned about RAM size or disk space?
RAM size. Disk space is fine. Disk space we have lots.
Where if your RAM isn't it a concern that the database will be very slow? You'll have no space for cache.
Actually, for example, my answer works perfectly without any cache store. You don't need even a page cache. It works.
Right now we only have like 100 meg footprint for everything for the RAM for the database, but we have like 500 gig for disk space. So disk space is not a concern. RAM is.
I mean, I would like to help somebody drive an effort for it. That's not something in my primary concern, but I mean, in the beginning of my SQL, the idea was always that we will do one track. I mean, you need to focus your business somewhere.
Yeah.
We go here. But if somebody wants to go something else, our job is to help you go there by telling you what you can do and provide interface for you to achieve your goals.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right way to do open source development. And we will continue to go in that road, because nobody has a better model.
All right. Okay.
So I got a feature request for NODB development that there's online, quick table checksums, like instantaneous table checksums. You should just keep it all the time. I don't know how.
Multi-versioning of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I want someone to solve that problem.
You have that already, Maria.
Yeah, so you could just port it to XtraDB then?
You need a fast, you would benefit if you do that, you get automatically a fast can start too.
Yeah.
And that's not that hard to get up there.
Usually when it comes to performance, the major feature request is how to get the response before I have the question. Like otherwise the MySQL response just some millisecond time. So how do you do that?
You need more ring.
Black hole.
Oracle is kind of the name kind of sounds that it's going to do that.
Didn't you see the previous keynote last year at the MySQL conference? Actually, that was an Oscar. He showed me how you in Perl can get the answer before you have the question. You only need to port that to MySQL. And Anthony's new store procedures in Perl will allow you to do that. And I can donate one bottle of you to do that while you do the coding.
Yeah, but that was usually like when people come and offer like, yeah, you have to do better performance there. Like our next step for our database performance is just getting the answers before we even have the question. And same for quite a few components of the website.
So we have to make database servers always answers 42. And sooner or later, you will have one person who needs the answer 42.
And that's like,
And then we can sell the server extremely expensive, just
if the analog clock is standing at the same position all the time, it will tell you the right time twice a day. So it's a similar concept. It can be applied to databases.
Yeah.
Cool.
Features are
When it comes to serious kind of features, when I run a website, one of the things that matter me most is I would like to have a fuzzy, replication without too much of consistency on the disk, but really great consistency in memory with like fuzzy philosophies. Like if something fails or the Earth crashes, I just want to recover to something what was like in the last minute or so. And this is kind of like all the current development is going after like sinks to file system instead of like toleration. So how, like, do you see any like kind of tolerating mistakes and tolerating failures as part of the MySQL development instead of relying on operating systems to have consistency for you?
That's replication. Assuming that you have total crash, you can then say that unreplicate up to this event, and that will basically be backward in time.
Yeah, but the issue right now is like if something crashes in your network, you have to like.
You mean that you will want to roll back the drop table or drop cascades you actually did a couple of minutes ago?
Yeah, that one I don't want to do. I don't want drop cascade, but
But you want to roll back that because you just did it.
oh, I probably will look at my snapshot I have somewhere around in the past few hours and just have to resync it from that.
But I mean, the current what we have today is replication. You can kind of do that.
Yeah, but the whole issue now is like there's lots of there are two camps. Some people want sinks and some people don't, and people there is nothing in the middle where we say you can have consistency without having sinks.
But don't you already have a solution for that? No, when you work for Sun. ZFS. That actually solves the problem. You just do instant snapshots over time and you can go back.
Right, it's more about not writing the data and still having consistency, like recovery. So if say you have a cache on a disk in Maria, right?
Yeah.
And you turn off the power, it will lose data on the cache somehow. So how can you
From the cache. That's just
from the
never-
cache? But can you recover your table to a same position that you can use and say, okay, I've recovered my table, this position, I've lost some cache, I've lost some records, but it is intact. As in, like, how can you tolerate something like fuzzy losses where you don't know what you lost?
But why we actually, that's exactly how soft sync point works. You get a sync point every 30 seconds, but if you can get a loss in between, you're in a loss right in between, but everything is consistent.
But the problem with those would say if you lose power and you have this cache, that means that you can have an entry in your log telling that I've synced it, while the data is not synced actually.
Actually, this
That's why everyone turns off this cache.
Yeah, that's why everyone turns off this cache and lose 30% of performance over there.
No,
And they can tolerate that somehow by
no,
having
but
Get more cache in your rate controller.
Oh, okay. The issue with the caches on disk is that you get just because the command queuing, like the bigger amount of work is being queued on the disk. Because without cache on the disk, we have just 32 commands that are being able to queue.
Didn't Gillen
If you have like 2 megabyte cache, then
didn't Gillen demonstrate with Maria 1.0 that you can pull the power plug from the hard drive and it was able to recover?
Yeah, and you can define how much do you want to.
with a disk cache,
Yeah, it just Gillen pulled the power plug from the.
this is what you have to design for. I mean, it's not something that happens when you just write code correctly. When you know that your caches are consistent. The idea is that how you tolerate inconsistent caches.
The pages of checksums are.
But actually, we do tolerate things that are inconsistent. We will actually roll back to the place where it is consistent.
Exactly, that is a really good thing, but how to figure that out? Because you have a checkpoint record in your log. I finished the checkpoint, here we go.
Yeah. And
You want to check that.
it's checked. We have consistency there at the checkpoint, plus up to the last sync.
Yeah, but you don't know when the last thing happened, because caches lie. So how do you deal with lying hardware by still having it, being able to recover?
But that's what we already do in Maria, that's what InnoDB is doing. If you have
No.
InnoDB in that case will corrupt it, and actually that's another enhancement I have for InnoDB is that if it sees a corruption in one table and one page, don't shut the whole server down. Then
Oh, that's forced recovery equals 1.
But then,
I don't want my server to go down. I want just to take that table offline.
okay, well, let's see. But in this case, you have a corrupted block, and not something that is logical that has anything to do with the soft sync point.
No, it's LSN bad or whatever.
Okay, in that case, in Maria, we basically shut down that table. You do a repair table and it works afterwards. We repair everything that we can do by checksums and everything.
That functionality should be any engine, I think. There shouldn't be a difference between engines on whether, it shouldn't, like, InnoDB should just decide to shut down, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, can you add the partition support to the corrupt table? Like when you have multiple partitions
Yeah.
and just only one partition get corrupt,
Yeah.
now everything crash.
Like me, I have 150,000 tables on a server. One table has some bit corruption. It shuts the whole server down.
I agree that's a bug in a DB, and that should be fixed.
Yeah.
Well, you can just comment that code down.
No, it's not that easy, because if you do it correctly, you need to be able to mark that these tables are inaccessible.
It'll probably just crash it a minute later when it tries to access it.
Yes, you got it.
I've been working lots of looking at how checksum impact.
Let's take it.
About delayed updates in MySum, like update delayed, like insert delayed for counters and stuff like that.
We are still debating if instant delay was a good idea or not.
It's really useful, like on high traffic sites, stuff like that. We don't increment like counter a table. We don't really care if it happens for every class, stuff like that. Where performance is an issue.
Currently, we are more focused on making updates and deletes so fast, so you don't care about it get deleted.
So,
But-
similar to the insert buffer, or like in InnoDB, or not?
No, insert delay it creates a separate.
No, I understand it's separate. I just wondered
But
if that would be useful.
But you could do that with the store procedure. And actually, I'm making a framework for that. You can put queries in a buffer and just say that execute these over time. And you can even restore the disks so they are persistent. That actually would be a nice thing to do. And then say even tell the server that if it's not election day, in that case, you can do this in slow pace.
A feature request. A feature request for a new engine, or actually extension of existing engines in remarkable ways, which is what lots of people need is transactional counter engine, which would store transaction changes, not in absolute values, but in deltas. So if a transaction gets rolled back, a counter gets decreased by 3 instead of so you don't have locking on increases or decreases of the values.
You can do something like that just by, if you don't care about your increment being sparse, if it holds it okay, you can do things like that using store procedures and using a MySum non-transactional table. And it works like that. There's no good reason for that. When you have a 64-bit ID and just incrementing on blocks, it's okay to have it sparse.
Yeah, but the whole idea is just to have, that my commits that value that increased to the counter and I roll back
just
decreases.
don't use all the increment on the table.
Don't decrease it.
What I need for statistics for table count or
You have instant table counts.
No, I mean I need, for example, how many pages are in this category, like for this kind. And this is one of the major locking scenarios. Like you get lots of locking and you want that consistent. It's like you don't want locking and you want that consistent, and that's the issue that in theory can be resolved with the delta values in the transaction records instead of absolute values.
Then you
But
can
why
I just need someone to implement that.
so you're looking at
I have similar problems with that too. I have a one-row MySum table where I have lots of incrementers. The problem is that the way replication works is that you can't actually check that table between master and
So
slave.
what about a specialized kind of engine where you insert rows which are just deltas and it just maintains a sum of just basically a statistical engine which will just sum all the rows.
As in like,
And
well, if like what it tells, like if you look at the GAN handler interface, it already it can pass deltas, it can pass absolute values. It's just the engine has to track the transactional context what other
what
changes
value
and
that you implement.
Yeah.
That case, in that case,
If you
it
just,
would be
if you're just storing
The
deltas,
problem is since it's part
you
of
can then
it, it's
aggregate that.
binary logic.
And if the storage, if there was some way to optimize sum, that would be better.
yeah, it could work. But I mean, this is one of the problems that are right now unsolved in master world.
Yeah.
It's really
So-
common operation. And
So what would be nice would be some optimization. Statistical, like maybe some standard deviation, just statistical optimization.
Yeah.
Aggregate.
So there's.
We need Google people for that.
So what you said about the count, that might be possible using some add-on or something. For a given condition, provide a count. That might be built-in feature. So for you provide this is a condition, and I need count for this condition on this string.
Okay, if you change that, then I'm not responsible.
Something like that. So say I have 10 messages board, I need message count each message. So I provide condition as a message board, message X. So for each message ID, for this message board, you will count.
You know, any kind of reference counting is like lots of systems rely on reference counting.
Many people need this. So if you take example of our case, we have a message board and we need message count for each message board. So what we do, we start a transaction, update count equal to count plus 1, insert message.
That's more important to get the consistent slave master.
For us,
So that is
it's
required.
simply the fact that there is lots of locking in that. Like our transactions are quite big. Like our transactions have about up to 20 statements on different tables when someone changes a page. So it's like we have always the issue of like deadlocks happen, and simply because it's quite difficult to avoid them, and especially the counter values. Like they just ask for deadlocks all the time.
It's on each website counter is required. Each and every website will count.
So I think like such a storage engine could be like something would make like really MySQL kind of, you know.
You really need a storage engine for it. I think
It might
it
be
should
add-on.
be possible to write a store procedure or.
I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you.
You consider it as an index. How do we update index? Can we update counter in the similar manner?
Yeah, I think
It's a counter
it can be a very good way to do it.
The way we update index, similar way we can update counter for this condition.
Simply, sometimes some of the like high performance non-locking ways is just to have amount of entries being inserted and then someone just grabbing them and converting into counters, like having like staging area for your counter and then
Using delta.
and then the actual area for the counter. But that's kind of, you know, once you have lots of changes, it's quite expensive. But it is simply that would just be a showcase of how different kinds of data can be like using the storage engine possibilities to actually do the pattern matching, like operations that match certain patterns.
So it doesn't have to scan all the rows. Whenever the update is happening, they should say, okay, it might matches the existing data.
Thomas, how does it differ from maintaining certain value of function or query? Do you mean that the fact that these counters will allow to merge actions of different transactions?
The issue is that transactions can fail, and it's really interesting that those counters are the most minor parts of the transaction. They don't have huge value. They know you see those numbers somewhere, but they're not something that what is like critical, what annoys lots of people, but you still want to keep them kind of intact. And if everything else, and then this minor thing in your transaction, which is like the most minor feature out there, like the most minor change you make in your database when you do some major, operation, it is the most problematic in terms of locking. Because it will just simply the amount. So if you're increasing the amount of pages to 5,000, that means that other 5,000 pages are actually able to also try to lock the very same counter. And you don't need to lock it. There is no need to. So of course you can do that in a non-transactional way and avoid any problem with it. But if you look at nice databases, you want transactions. I love transactions. All our tables are transactional. So it's
I think I could do it 2 tables and a couple of sort procedures.
we've got it.
I'll play with it sometime.
Can we have some profile or some limits on for the client? When a client make a connection, we will say only the client will use at the most half gigabyte memory, not more than that.
So there's a kind of setting a limit?
We do have limitations of all the different paths that SQL service is using. I mean, you can limit how much sort and everything else are using. But we don't have anything that's global for one client. And we have thought about that, but it hasn't been a high priority.
That was part of my yesterday's talk. Half a megabyte query can consume a gigabyte without using any buffers. And it is like these kinds of things. It's like you can't just start using internal memory allocators and like to have like every thread has its own memory pool and lots of accounting. It's an overhead. You have to then every operation that there is like take a look at say PHP memory management. It's like it's a pain to do that actually, to have like memory limits in there and how MySQL uses that. It's like whenever you add some external lib library, and it just skips all those paths. So it's like every code that is written in your server has to suddenly start using some internal per thread, per user memory manager, and it's like it's a huge thing. Of course, that's a nice feature, but it costs much.
Actually, that's pretty easy.
Yeah. Okay. 2 days.
One thing, MySQL 5.1. I haven't looked at really easy, but MySQL 5.1. If you have one large multi-statement query with just select one, just repeat that a lot. It doesn't clean up its memory between each operation. It's a 1 or 2 line patch will fix that. If you have a very large, just select one. MySQL 5.1 crashes with basically.
You mean it doesn't release after the query?
Between each individual query and multi-statement, it doesn't release the memories.
On the client or the server?
On the server. It's just only about 2 line patch will fix.
Can you tell me the bug number?
Every time I submit the bug number, it gets
Send me an
close to
email, please.
duplicate.
Almost at sun.com.
But really, this throughout the code, there is a lot of bad usage of the memory roots. For example, you can crash the server, but just by creating a lot of save points in the transactions. We need someday to review the usage of memory roots throughout the code.
I mean, that's basically what we do. Put more limits on the users, and that's what Google has done in some sense. I mean, MySQL was originally designed as a sharp razor that you should be able to do anything, but you should, as a sharp razor, you don't give that to anyone, to everyone.
So like exactly, in this case, like all the memory you say, for example, InnoDB save points, that's already in the InnoDB part. So what, in order to fix that, I mean, it's as simple as like lots of these things. If you start thinking about them, you end up requiring everyone else to start using your memory allocation routines that are the ones that you kind of that you want, that can be accounting for certain use and say. So right now, if you look at the InnoDB plugin, it wants to do its own memory management. It uses mmap for the buffer pool. It uses malloc. It's like you're really limiting all the people providing you external stuff.
And the big problem with databases, I think that a good DBA can crash any database if you really want. Make it incredibly slow, even get it crashed by just having a normal user account. It's not hard. And so the question is how much protection you want.
42946.
How much protection
4196?
one does want to have, because all protection causes a little bit of overhead. And for some people it can be important for that.
So I got a feature actually profiling exactly what memory MySQL is using and what it is.
You actually, if you're using the debug library, you can get that with us by sending a signal. You get that in the trace.
You're saying it's sending us
Actually,
out.
You got any closing words, guys? Our license is about to expire. We're gonna have to,
I have one picture.
Oh no, Tom is kicking me out. Tom, you're always terminating parties too early. You've left the company and you're still doing that again.
Hey, I do have a problem. I'm going to fly tomorrow. I can't take this with me. Nobody leaves the room before this I empty.
It's verified. And it's target version.
thank you everybody for hanging out to the bitter end.